नमः विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन् इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी वशत्यादेशकारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधरा श्रीवासादि भक्तवृंदा। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधरा वासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय गोपीनाथ राधा गोपीनाथ श्री राधे जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा माई जय सुदर्शन जय गोवर्धन जय गिरि गोवर्धन जय गिरि गोवर्धन जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय प्रभुपाद Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jayo Jaya Prabhupada, Jayo Jayo Gurudev, 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 Jayo Jaya Gurudev, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura, Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naranchaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Seva Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkrapa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. So we are continuing with our Srimad Bhagavatam study class. So today we are starting a new chapter. So we are starting chapter 13, which is entitled, Dhritarashtra quits home. So the first verse, Sri Sutta Goswami said, while traveling on a pilgrimage, Vidura received knowledge of the destination of the self from the great sage Maitreya and then returned to Hastinapur. He became as well versed in the subject as he desired. So here, the first verse, we are going in a little different direction. So the next chapter, it talks about, in the last chapter we talked about the birth of Parikshit Maharaj, how he was born, how he was already predicted by the Brahmanas to achieve great things. He was compared to great personalities, and then how the Pandavas, they engaged in sacrifices, and along through with their grandmother, Parikshit Maharaj grew up nicely. So the next couple of or three talk about the events into Parikshit Maharaj becoming the king. So it talks about how the first generation, the older generation, Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, and Kunti, and Vidura, they are all leaving. Then it will talk in the next chapter. We'll talk about the disappearance of the Lord, and then when they heard it, then the retirement of the Pandavas. So ultimately, all these three activities led to Parikshit Maharaj becoming the king. So these are all the background information that Sutta Goswami is giving, in terms of the question that are on the topic of Parikshit Maharaj was born, how he became the king, what he did as a king, and then why he gave up all the activities. So so that is the background. So in this, for the first verse is talks about how Vidura. So Vidura was actually insulted in the assembly, because after Krishna comes, comes to as an ambassador, and then Duryodhana tries to arrest him. So there is already a friction, and then later when the consultation is going on, when Krishna goes away after he was tried to capture, Vidura becomes upset with Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra, and in front, everybody is giving their advice, don't engage in the warfare, except Karna and Shakuni, and those are the ones who are supporting Duryodhana. Vidura tries to advise Duryodhana, he is not listening. He turns to Dhritarashtra and he says, if you want to save the kingdom, if you want to save your life, your line, then there is only one way. And then Dhritarashtra asks, what should I do? He says, either kill your first son Duryodhana or arrest him and put him in jail. Now, being a Mahajana, he is very straightforward. No, no hidden agenda. He is very straightforward. Then Duryodhana becomes upset and he starts, insulting Vidura. He talks everything bad about him, and ultimately he calls him a son of a Shudrani. So Vidura becomes insulted by this, and then he throws away his bow and arrow and everything, and he leaves for a pilgrimage. So he was not there throughout the war, and only after the war now he is returning. And during this period of pilgrimage, he has actually met Maitreya Muni, who got instruction directly from Lord Krishna. We will hear about this in the second and third chapter of Bhagavatam as well. The discussions between Krishna and Maitreya Muni, and later Maitreya Muni and Vidura. So after having the discussions, Vidura received the knowledge of destination from Maitreya. Then he is coming back to Hastinapur because he wanted to support his help his brother. Even though Dhritarashtra was such a foolish and cunning, and he is a personality with all bad qualities, still Vidura was very merciful to him. So he wanted to deliver the worst. So he returns back for that purpose. Srila Prabhupada talks about the background of how Yamadharma became Vidura in the purport. We will hear the story in one of the future verses. After asking various questions and becoming established in the transcendental loving service of Lord Krishna, Vidura retired from putting questions to Maitreya Muni. It's a very, very important verse, right? So here, the purpose of questioning somebody is very clearly established. Srila Prabhupada's purport is very beautiful, to the point, and it is very relevant to all the devotees, right? So the purpose of putting forward any question has to be this. What is it? Ultimately, when Vidura, he kept on asking questions, ultimately he became firmly established in bhakti, eka bhakti, eka bhakti. That's the word that is used, the Jataika Eka Bhakti, Govinda. Was firmly established. He kept asking questions until firmly established in Bhakti. So we need to be very clear. Srila Prabhupada talks about how many questions lead to many answers. But then, when you ask questions for a fruitive, for material gains, it becomes like a fruitive activity. And you may ask questions also, to satisfy your intellectual capability or jnana. Both the platform, the one in the jnana is just dry knowledge, and fruitive activities always leads to misery. Anything that we do in the material world, any activity in the material world will ultimately lead to misery. So any questions that are asked to, in this sense, we cannot satisfy a person, right? It will always leave him in a dissatisfied state, or it will leave him in a state where he has more questions, right? You want to be happy in life. So we ask questions, how can I be happy? Earn money, somebody says. So you go and earn money. Even after earning money, there's no guarantee that we'll be happy. And even the richest person in the world, still he has to go through suffering, disease, old age. Nobody can escape this, right? Death, birth, old age, disease, nobody can escape it. They have to go through this 4 things. So then the question, then there is a frustration out of it. Then there is more question, and then that question is, who am I? What is this material world? Why is everyone suffering? Things like this on an intellectual jnana platform. And again, we may get an answer. We may even go to the answer where we may understand ourselves, that I'm not the body, I'm the soul. But still, even person who realize that, self-realize, if they are not established in devotional service, they fall down because it's very dry. Right? That's what Prabhupada gives the example in the purport of how people, the Mayavadi sannyasis, they engage in, all these kind of charitable activities because nobody can be without activity. So even after self-realization, because there is no taste there is no rasa there, and there is no happiness there, they kind of try to come back, go down in their platform and start engaging in bodily activities. So only when our questions lead us ultimately to the Eka Bhakti, being established strongly in devotional service, Will our question answer be satisfied? So for devotees particularly, now that we have become devotees, we have understood this concept of, and we have taken up this bhakti into our life. Our questions should be single, straight focused. There cannot be any other focus in life. The only focus has to be is, how do I become eka bhakti, become single, and how do I come to a point where my focus is completely on Govinda, bhakti to Govinda. So, until we come to that stage, we will keep asking questions. But once we have reached that state, like Vidura retired, we will also come out. So when we meet a spiritual person, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, second paragraph, that, the question that the purpose of having spiritual master is to ask the question which will lead us to Eka Bhakti. Right? If for any other purpose we have a spiritual master, it is like a show bottle case. It has no value. Similarly, the spiritual master should only accept those disciples who are serious about their spiritual life. So all our questions and the answers that we receive should make us go in the direction of getting rid of all the other, we are not, pure devotees. It's not that our, even after hearing so many things, still, we are not completely pure. But then, we should, introspect ourselves. Am I purifying myself? Have my material desires gone down? My desire to do sense enjoyment, my desire for intellectual knowledge, desire for name and fame, women, money, has all of these things gone down? And my interest in serving Krishna, has it gone up? That's an introspection. And if that is not happening, all our questions should be primed towards that. What should I do to get rid of this? What should I, or in a positive way, what should I do to become pure, in my devotional service? We see that when Sanatana Goswami met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he put forth these questions. He says, many people call me scholar, but I am an idiot. I don't even know who I am. If I don't even know who I am, how can I accept the position that I'm a scholar? And then Mahaprabhu is saying, the answer, still you're acting humble. Then he gives the answer, you're not the. That's where he says, Krishna Dasa, Jivera Swarupa Hoy Nityera Krishna Das. Your identity, he did not say you're not the body or soul. Yes, he said that, but the more important answer that he gave, the point is, Jivera Swarupa Hoy Nityera Krishna Das. The Swarupa of Jiva is Nityera Krishna Dasa. He is a servant of Krishna. That was the crux of the discussion between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Sanatana Goswami. So we should put forward question, that helps us grow and come to the point of Eka. Only be worried about devotional service and nothing else. So that is verse 2. Verse 3 and 4. When they saw Vidura return to the palace, all the inhabitants, Maharaj Yudhishthira, his younger brothers, Dhritarashtra, Satyaki, Sanjaya, Kripacharya, Kunti, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, Uttara, Kripi, many other wives of Kauravas and other ladies with children, all hurried to him in great delight. It so appeared that they had regained their consciousness after a long time. So, here, when they saw all the inhabitants of, Hastinapur, they were very happy that Vidura has come back to them, because they all have very high regards for Vidura. Even though Dhritarashtra didn't listen to him, but still in his heart he knew that Vidura was a very elevated personality. He's a Mahajan. He's Yamadharmaraja's incarnation, and he was such a pure devotee of the Lord. So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes about particularly all the ladies of Kuru dynasty. He talks about Gandhari, how she was such a chaste lady that when she was married to Dhritarashtra, because he was blind, she covered her eyes. She said, if my husband doesn't have the capability to enjoy through his eyes, I also, as a wife, don't want to do that. That was the level of relationship the husband and wife had. It was voluntary. Nobody told her she needs to do it. So she did it voluntarily out of chastity. So that's a higher levels of chastity is there. And Gandhari is considered at the topmost level because of her dedication to her husband. She's such a high class lady. Srila Prabhupada writes, such a such a high class lady, that she was so strict in her principles, right? Dhritarashtra, so it's a little little difficult to understand. We know that she is such a high class lady, and we know Dhritarashtra is a very envious person, right? He was the root cause of all the problems, and he was, it's, even though we call Duryodhana is a problem, the bigger problem was Dhritarashtra. He was also equally envious of the Pandavas and the devotees, particularly his own brother Pandu and his sons. So Dhritarashtra was actually the root cause. From him only the enviousness went to Duryodhana. So by nature, Dhritarashtra was, we learn, when the Pandavas were poisoned, they were, put in a house that was put to fire. So many problems. Even during the dice match, he just kept quiet. As his sons were winning, actually internally he was very happy. So even when Draupadi was insulted, he didn't react. He was such a horrible king, and he had worst character. But then on the other side, we see such a chaste lady. So the question can be asked: why did she has to remain faithful to such a bad husband? He is not even a devotee. He was envious of the Lord. He was envious of the devotee. He was offender to the devotees. Why did Gandhari has to be chaste, right? The question of chastity, it's a very interesting topic if we think about it. As I was talking in the previous classes, the idea of chastity is based on, one's personal values. It has nothing to do with external factors, including the husband. It doesn't matter whether the husband is good or bad, right? She grew up in a very dharmic family, Gandhari, where she was taught the values of chastity, and she inherited it, took deeply into her heart, and she practiced it. And then, if somebody is going to say, I'll follow the rules of chastity as long as my husband is eligible, then there is no chastity there. If the husband is super eligible, anybody will be attached to the husband and they will follow whatever the husband says. So that is out of love and attachment. This is out of principle. There's a difference, right? The chastity out of the relationship and chastity out of values, right? When somebody is very attached to her husband, or her husband is super qualified, he has great qualities, automatically it is easy to be chaste, right? But more difficult than that is when the husband is not qualified, still the wife is maintaining high level of chastity. That is not because of the relationship, that is more because of the values she has inherited in her life. So if you see Vedic culture is not about, there is an importance to relationship, but the more important to relationship is the value and the responsibility. The same applies. It's not only the wife, the husband also. If the wife is not the wife is not what you call as is not a right mood, doesn't mean the husband can abandon the wife. He has to take care. Whatever is his responsibility, he has to follow. We see that in the life of Srila Prabhupada. He was not happy with his wife. So he has approached his father for a second wife, and then his father rejected him, and then he understood what was the father was saying, and he was very tolerant with his wife, even though he was a great devotee. She was not a devotee. She, we read how she even threw the books Bhagavatam just to get a pocket of tea, to purchase tea. But Srila Prabhupada, he was very tolerant. He finished all his responsibilities. When his son grew up to the point where he can take care of the family, that's when Srila Prabhupada left. And even then he was very careful. He thought 2 or 3 times before he took sannyas. He was very careful about his approach. He was not whimsical. Just because he didn't like his wife, he didn't give up his responsibility. He was a perfect householder, and later he was a perfect sannyasi. You'll see that actually, Srila Prabhupada, how elevated Srila Prabhupada was, how high his tolerance was. Later, in one of the times, Srila Prabhupada, shared with Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He even praised his wife. She was very, she served me nicely. I was a very difficult person to live with. Srila Prabhupada was so humble. Srila Prabhupada was super humble, and he was super appreciative. So the point is that is there is no question of there is no question of whether he is qualified or whether she is qualified. It is a question of what values we have inherited for ourselves, right? So that's why you see great people like Gandhari, and even the case of Sukanya. She was asked, her husband said, take me to a prostitute. So externally, when we hear this story, it may look like a very male chauvinistic story. How can the husband ask such a great wife to carry him to a prostitute? She is carrying him, and she became a servant of the. So the idea is that is Sukanya. She was so focused on her values system, on her responsibility, right? And the husband, whether good or bad, it didn't affect. She was fixed in her values, and the result was that then when Indra cursed the rishi that he will die the next day morning when the sun rises, Sukanya in turn said, if my husband is going to die, I will, the sun should not rise. And the sun didn't rise. Surya couldn't rise. He had to stop his going around. We heard from fifth about the fifth canto from Gansham Prabhu. We recently explained the details how he keep going around non-stop. But Surya couldn't move. She was so powerful um, that she could stop sun from rising up, and then all the Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu has to come, and Vishnu has to personally promise that Sukanya that yes, Indra's curse will take place, but by his mercy the rishi will get his life back again. So the point is that is when she followed the chastity, she was so powerful that even the Trimurtis have to come and ask her permission for the sun to rise. So her chastity was not pegged to whether husband good or bad. As long as she has a husband, she will be perfect. And in return, she was more than in this world today. So the Vedic culture is power is not taken, right? Freedom or power or the right to do something is not taken, it is given. How it is given? Through service. When we serve, automatically we are interested with the power. So women or men, if they follow their responsibilities, their duties perfectly, they will automatically become powerful. They don't have to ask others for it's like today the wife has to fight with the husband. You have to give me equal right. The husband has to say no. You have to take care of me nicely. You don't have to fight. There is no question of asking, demanding anything. It has to come automatically. If we do our responsibilities perfectly, things will automatically come to us. We don't have to go and demand from others. That is the Vedic culture. So then he also talks about Draupadi, Kunti, the life of Kunti, the life of Draupadi, and also Shubhadra Devi. How she was a sister, and she was proper talks about how also she gives in Jagannath Puri you can worship Shubhadra along with Baladev. Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maya Sudarshan Chakra ki Jai. He says how Arjuna kidnapped him. Balaram was not happy, but then Krishna started pacified Balaram and said Arjuna is the best husband Subhadra can have. And then she gave birth to Abhimanyu, and she was super upset when Abhimanyu was dead, but later she was pacified by Parikshit and the growth of Parikshit. And he also talks about Kunti's life, how he was born as a sister of Vasudev and later adapted by the king of Kunti Bhoj. Bojar dynasty, and then she became known as Kunti, and how she served Durvasa Muni, and through his power, through his mercy, she begot Karna, and then later all the tribulations that she went through in her life, Srila Prabhupada. So you see that they didn't have a very, whether it is men or women, just because they were born in royal family, they didn't have an easy life. This idea of easy life and sense gratification is just an illusion that is created, right? It's just an illusion that is created, and there is there's like a carrot that is dangled in front of us. It's like tied to our head. So as far as we keep moving, the carrot will always be out of our reach. Text number 5. With great delight, they all approached him as if life had returned to their bodies. They exchanged obeisances and welcomed each other with embraces. So, each according to their positions, they went, they paid obeisances. See, again, they are seeing their uncle who's very after a long time, and still the etiquette is that is you first pay obeisances, right? When you do obeisances to elders, your life, your life actually, the lifetime, how long we live actually increases. Standing up, for elders, paying respects to them, these are all increases our lifetime. And in devotee relationship, it increases our devotional service. The more we do dandavats, the more we pay obeisances to other devotees, more our devotional service will grow. We see that in the case of Raghunatha Das Goswami. It is said that he used to chant like 200,000 names, that is 2 lakh nama. Along with it, he used to do 2,000 dandavats every day to various dham deities and the devotees. He used to do 2,000 dandavats every day. That's if such a perfect devotee, he is doing dandavats so many times. Where are we? So when we see devotees, we should do dandavats. These are all natural etiquettes we should develop. Text 6. Anxieties and long separation, they all cried out of affection. King Yudhishthira then arranged for sitting accommodation and a reception. So it's all Vedic culture, Srila Prabhupada will explain in the next verse. So we will do the explanation with the next verse along together. 7. Arjuna ate sumptuously and took sufficient rest. He was comfortably seated. Then the king began to him, and all who were present there listened. See, so Prabhupada writes about the etiquette of when somebody comes to the house. First, we should make them sit in a nice place. These are all Vedic culture, right? When any guest come, they'll be, first they'll place to sit. Then they'll be wash their feet. If they are elders, their feet will be washed, and the water will be, put on everybody in the family. Then they'll be given water to drink. Then they will be fed sumptuously prashadam. Then they'll be asked to take some rest. Some nice place to take rest, and then they'll again seated, and then the conversation talks. This is what is culture. Culture is expecting somebody to call us and say, hey, I'm coming. There is no question of calling and telling somebody that we are coming. In Vedic culture, it is always guest come unannounced. And actually, unannounced guests are considered the greatest form of, serving unannounced guests is considered the greatest service for, Grahastha. Grahastha should always be waiting to serve the guest. When a guest come to the house, we should be more happy. Nowadays, we have to call, and even if we call somebody, they'll say, oh, I'm not available, don't come this day, that day. But at least in devotee relationship, we should nurture this culture. These are all the etiquettes that will enrich our devotional service. So we should always invite devotees. Can you please come? For lunch, for dinner, for breakfast. Then feed them prashadam nicely. Allow them to take rest. Then seat them. Then talk devotional talks. That is real association. When Rupa Goswami talks about association, he talks 6 kinds of association, right? Giving gifts, accepting gifts, giving prashadam, accepting prashadam. So we need to think as devotees, how much are we engaging in this activity? Are we, really inviting guests on a regular basis? Actually, Vedically, as I was saying in the previous classes, Grahastha means you should serve a guest every day. So, given that we live in a horrible Kali Yuga, at least on a weekly basis, we should be, requesting devotees to come to our place and have prashadam. We should be feeding them. And Srila Prabhupada talks, leave alone a friend. Even an enemy was treated like this. We see that in Mahabharata. Right? Even the worst enemy was treated like this. Like when Arjuna, Bhima, and Krishna went to Jarasandha to kill him, even though he, even after he knew that they have come to fight with him and kill him, he still, engaged them as guests. He took care of even if the worst character Jarasandha behaves like this, then how much more we should be as devotees. But then we see sometimes even among devotees, this is, that devotee is not nice, don't call him, all these things, it's not nice. We have to treat even enemies nicely. Text 8. Maharaj Yudhishthira said, "My uncle, do you remember how you always protected us along with our mother from all sorts of calamities? Your partiality, like the wings of a bird, saved us from poisoning and arson." Right? So, Yudhishthira Maharaj is remembering all the times that, Vidura saved them from disaster. So in Mahabharat, we see that there were many attempts. Dhritarashtra was always very envious of his brother and his children, right? And he knew that they were more powerful and they were really qualified to become the kings, right? So because he was envious, he was unfit to become a king. And on the death of Pandu, he was only made a regent king. He was not the real king. He was just made a representative king until the son of Pandu becomes fit to become, take over the throne. But then he became very, greedy, and he wanted to pass on all the kingdom to his sons rather than, to the sons of Pandu. So he was always envious of the, Pandavas, the sons of Pandu. So we see that, Dhritarashtra, and then, Vidura always understood this. Being a Mahatma, he was actually, Prabhupada writes in the purport, he was equal to all his nephews, but he was especially more, protective of the Pandavas because they were undergoing more tribulations. Duryodhana was always protected. There was no danger. Pandavas never tried to kill Duryodhana, but Duryodhana all the time wanted to do harm to, Pandavas. And Dhritarashtra was either directly or indirectly supporting it all the time. So Vidura was more merciful to the Pandavas because of the suffering they were going through. Right, particularly, like many things like the poisoning, right? When Bhima, in the childhood itself, they understood that Bhima, being the son of Vayu, is very powerful. So when they were playing, once Duryodhana fed him poison and threw him in the river, and when he went to the bottom, and he went all the way to the Nagaloka, where his uncle, or sorry, great grandfather was there, who gave him the amrita of the, or a drink of the Nagas, which made him as powerful as 10,000 elephants. And the arson, there was one time, it was said that, after all the princes, they graduated from the academy, Duryodhana and his brothers went on all four directions, conquered all the kings on behalf of Hastinapur, and they collected so much wealth. And Yudhishthira was made actually the prince, higher apparent, he heir to the whole throne. And he, by his character and by his behavior, all the citizens became super attached to him, right? And when all of this happened, when Dhritarashtra saw that Yudhishthira is very dear to all the citizens, and Arjuna and Bhima, Nakula, Sahadeva, through their power, have conquered the whole desert and brought much wealth, he became alarmed. He became super alarmed by it. And then he called his minister and said, "What should I do?" And the minister, being a very negative fellow, he said, "Actually, you should kill them. Any king should be very careful." He gave a story that is also there in Panchatantra. He talked about a jackal, right? He gave this example to Dhritarashtra. He said, in a forest, once there was a deer who was the head of a herd. She was very powerful, and nobody could catch her, that particular deer. So the jackal, once she called the king, the tiger, wolf, a mongoose, and a rat, and he said, "We'll form an alliance together. We will kill the deer, and then we can enjoy the meat." They all agreed. So the deer said, during the night, he told the mouse, "You go and chew the legs of the deer, so he'll be injured, and next day he can't run fast." And then the mouse did that, and the next day all of them together captured, and the tiger killed the deer. And then now the jackal, he said that, all of you go take bath and come, I'll protect the meat. So they all went and take bath, and first tiger came, and as soon as the tiger came, the jackal said, "You know what? I'm not going to touch the, he was just sitting there meditating. The tiger came and said, why are you meditating? And then jackal said, no, 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 I don't want to touch this meat. The mouse, he was bragging that even a tiger couldn't kill a deer, and only by his power this deer was killed. So I became very insulted, so I don't want to touch this meat. And then tiger said, oh, I am also insulted. I want to only eat that I have conquered on my own. I don't want this meat. Seeing this, the tiger went away. And then the mouse came. And when the mouse came, and the jackal said, yeah, this I'm not touching this, the touching this meat, because the tiger killed the deer and its claws is full of poison, so I think this meat is poison. So that the mouse became very scared, and he said, no, I don't want this meat, and he went away. Then finally the wolf came, and then the jackal said, oh, you know what, the tiger is very unhappy with this. He has just gone to get his wife, both of them together, they're going to kill you. And then the wolf got worried, and then he ran away. And then when finally the mongoose came, and then the jackal said, see, I have defeated all others, you are the last one, let's have a fight, whoever wins can eat this meat. And then the mongoose said, if you have defeated other three, who am I don't want to fight with you. And he went away. So then the minister told Dhritarashtra, this is how you should behave. You should if somebody is more powerful than you, you should defeat them through through cheating. If somebody is equal, you can challenge them. Somebody is less powerful than, you can intimidate them. So these are all many various ways you can win. And then when Dhritarashtra heard that, he thought, oh, this is a nice idea. And then along with Duryodhana, they made a plan. So the idea is that there was a place called Varnavata, outside Hastinapur. It was a few 100 miles away, where Duryodhana sent his minister, and then said that you build a beautiful palace, with make it with an inflammable material, all hemp, resin, hemp, straws, bamboo, all soaked in clarified butter, ghee. And then you build such a house, and then make it is such an expert that nobody can understand it's made of these material. And then when the time comes, you can burn the Pandavas. I will send them there. So then, the Purochana, who was the minister, he went and made such a house. And when the Pandavas was there, Dhritarashtra called and said, there is a village nearby where they have a big festival for Lord Shiva every year. Why don't you go there? And Yudhishthira knew that Dhritarashtra had some evil plan, and that's why he is sending him away. But still, being a younger person, he has to accept, because Dhritarashtra is in the role of his father, of their father. So they cannot go against his word. So they said, okay. And as they were about to leave, Yudhishthira, Vidura called them and, gave them a hint. It is, if you read Mahabharata, that particular part is very interesting. The instruction, Prabhupada also quotes that sloka in the verse, that Vidura said that there are weapons more sharper than sword, which can kill. So we should be careful of it. So he was talking about fire, right? How he knew? It is said that Vidura he knows Samudrika Lakshana, meaning he can read people's face. Right? Just by reading the face, he can understand the intention behind somebody. That's how expert he was. So he had already understood the mood of the Duryodhana and his plan. And then knowing that Purochana has gone there, so he gave an indirect warning. And it is said, he gave a lot of warning. But all of that he gave in code. Like this. He said he didn't directly tell, but he said, and also it is said that he talked in Milecha Bhasha. Only which Yudhishthira could understand. Nobody else knew the Bhasha of Mlechas. Who are the Mlechas? Westerners. So probably it could be Latin, Greek, English. I don't think so. It would be English, but Mlecha Bhasha. Because those days everybody talked Sanskrit or one of the classical Indian languages. And here we see that Mlecha Bhasha was talked because nobody else understood, except Yudhishthira and Vidura. Both of them knew that particular language. So it looks like they knew. It could be Greek, Roman, or Latin. We don't know. So one of those bhasha that existed 5,000 years, which was common among the Western people. So it looks like they talked in the Mlecha Bhasha. And then later Kunti asked, "What were you talking? We didn't understand, And then Yudhishthira explained that, Duryodhana has planned to burn our house." So the moment they went to the palace that was built for them, Yudhishthira, he inspected it, and then he immediately found out it's made of inflammable material. And then he told all his brothers. Then Bhima said, "Why do we have to stay here? Let's escape." Then he says, "No, no, no. We have to be very careful with our plan, because this Purochana, this minister, is very cunning. And we also have to do it in such a way that we don't get into more complications." So what they did was, they were thinking what to do. And then Vidura, being a very intelligent person, he also gave them an idea before. He said, "You should be like a jackal, which has many what you call many exits in its burrow. The jackal has many exits in its burrow, so that if it can't escape through one side, it can escape through the other side." So Yudhishthira was thinking on this instruction, and then Vidura sent him actually a guy who is very good in mining. So then they made underground passageway from the palace to the edge of the forest, without this Purochana knowing. He built that for the Pandavas. And then when the time came, what they did was, one night they had a Chandala woman and her 5 sons, and they went to the palace, ate, drank a lot of liquor, and they slept. And that night, and his 5 sons, they escaped. And at that night, the Purochana put that whole palace to fire. And then the Milecha, the Chandala woman, along with her 5 sons, they died. So everybody, after everything got burnt, and people they only saw the bones of 1 woman's bone and 5 men's bone. So they immediately assumed Kunti and the 5 sons were killed. And they all blamed, because they knew that this was planned, right? Even when Dhritarashtra sending away the Pandavas, the citizens were actually blaming, because everybody can understand, not suddenly somebody can become very nice and say, "Hey, why don't you go for a festival?" Obviously it means that he is planning something bad. Now everybody can understand intention. We may think we are very smart. Sometimes we see people lie, people tell lies, or they try to act smart, or suddenly they'll become very chummy, because they want to achieve something. It's not that others can't see it. Everybody has intelligence, right? People can understand. So they were all blaming, but then all the Pandavas, they escaped because of the help of Vidura. And here we see that Yudhishthira Maharaj, remembering all those times Vidura protected, supported them, and he was always talking dharma. He to advise Duryodhana, "Don't do this," Dhritarashtra, "Don't do this." But they did not listen to Vidura, and then that's why they got destroyed. Text 9. While traveling on the surface of the earth, how did you maintain your livelihood? At which holy places and pilgrimage sites did you render service? Sevitani iha bhutale. So now, see, this is very important, right? He asks about all the travel Vidura has gone. He knew that Vidura has gone pilgrimage. He has gone to holy places. So the first question that he is asking is, how did you maintain? Because first he is worried about him, about how were you able to maintain yourself. And the second question, that the most important question he is asking, is what services did you render? Because he understood Vidura, being a Mahatma, just doesn't go for a sightseeing. We need to be very clear. There are 2 purposes. The next purpose we will see in the next verse. The first purpose that we go to the Dham, is to serve the Dham. You're not just going there for sightseeing. We are not just going there to enjoy materially. We are going there to enjoy spiritually. And what is the way to enjoy spiritually? Is through service. If we want to enjoy devotional service, Krishna is joyfully performed. Conscious is joyfully performed, and the joy can be achieved only through seva. So when we go to the Dham, our mood should be to understand or think, meditate how we can do some more service. or the number of rounds we are chanting should increase. The complete time, because here in the material world, when we lead a normal life, we have certain compartments, right? Morning this time to this time spiritual life, then I go to office, then some time with the family, then this work, that work. So we have compartmentalized. We don't have time to think of Krishna all the time. But when we make a time to go to Dham or a holy place, um, from morning to night, at least those 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, however longer, by Krishna's mercy, we are able to travel to this holy sites, we should be completely focused on spiritual life. There cannot be anything material there. Our focus should be completely spiritual. And for that to happen as well, if we want the focus to be there, then we have to take up service. Without service, because we are not in an elevated level where we can chant like 198 rounds, 192 rounds like Haridas Thakur from morning to night, right? So then we need to engage in service. That's very important. So when we go to the Dham, we should be very careful, and be very focused on what is the purpose of us going there. Kshetra Mukhyani, the principal holy places, Sevitani, served by you. Which places did you do seva? And in terms of again, the Atiti Seva is very important. Srila Prabhupada talks about various chatras that are there. Even today, if you go, there are many places in India where are chatras where they serve food to all the pilgrimage people who are coming. This is very common. Nowadays it's all dying down in India because people have become very materialistic. But this idea of serving the guest naturally was, well ingrained, particularly holy places. Wealthy men will build chatram. Chatram is basically a lodge where people can stay and eat free food. All of these facilities were provided for free for all the people who are coming on a pilgrimage to the holy places. Even in my childhood, I've seen my aunt. She used to live in one of the holy places back in South India, and opposite to her house there was a chatra. Chatra means it's like a big house, with multiple rooms, and they were given to a family on the condition they can live rent free on that house, on the condition that every Dwadasi, the day after Ekadasi, that they serve at least 15 to 20 Vaishnavas for free, lunch. So, sorry, breakfast, which is to break the fast. They cook nice South Indian prasadam and then they serve them. So like that, and then they offer accommodation for free for people who are coming for the festivals to that holy place. And then in addition to maintaining the lodge, they will also do the service for the pilgrim people who are coming. And they also get advantage because they live rent free, and at the same time they can do service. This setup you can see in many places. Nowadays it's all dying down, but you would see that these kind of arrangements were made in all places. They were called chatrams. So it was very easy for a person who was spiritually inclined. The whole society was designed in such a way that the whole society supported people who are inclined towards spiritual life, right? Whereas we today live in a very horrible place where people look at us as if we are doing some great mistake if we are if we are inclined towards spiritual life. Whereas we see in the Vedic culture, even a few hundred years back, this idea of a person who was spiritually inclined was supported by the whole society and encouraged, and they were actually praised. If somebody was able to go, take up spiritual life seriously, they were praised and they were supported by the rest of the society. Text 10. It's one of the most important Bhagavatam verses. You will see that this verse is quoted by Srila Prabhupada in many places. Bhavat Bida Bhagavatas Tirtha Bhutas Swayam Vibho Tirthi Kurvanti Tirthani Swantastena Gadabrata. Translation: My Lord, devotees like your good self are verily holy places personified. Because you carry the personality of Godhead within your heart, you turn all places into places of pilgrimage. So here Yudhishthira is glorifying Vidura Maharaja and saying that you don't actually have to go to a holy place. Actually, because you yourself are a holy place. Why you are a holy place? Any place where Krishna is, that's a holy place. And because always in the heart of a pure devotee, Prabhupada gives the example of electricity and electric bulb, right? The electricity is maintained or manifested through the electric bulb. Similarly, the potency of the Lord is manifested to a pure devotee. So the holy places are very famous because Krishna performed pastimes there or Krishna lived there, right? um, so similarly, the devotees, they are considered tirtha places. They themselves are tirthas, because Krishna lives in their heart eternally. And Srila Prabhupada talks about even the purpose. We were talking about the first purpose of going to a dham is to do service, and here in the purport Srila Prabhupada is talking about the second purpose I just talked about, which is the whole reason of going to a tirtha is to meet pure devotees and ask and understand questions like Vidura asked Maitreya, and through that he come to the. So our whole mood when we go to a spiritual dham is not to take photos, selfies, and put it in Instagram. That's not our aim. Our aim is not to come and boast, oh, I went there, I hear, I saw this, I did. No, our aim is to serve the dham and to get the association of devotees. Otherwise, it's like a congregation of crows, which we will see in the future. So the whole idea of going to Tirtha Yatra is to hear from these devotees. Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about how Narada Muni, Vyasadeva heard from Narada Muni and he wrote Bhagavatam, and later Parikshit heard it from Sukadeva Goswami on the banks of Ganges. The whole Naimisharanya became purified because Bhagavatam was spoken there. That's why Naimisharanya is such a great Tirtha, because of all the devotees. So Tirtha means, or a holy place, is always related to Krishna or Vishnu. But Krishna or Vishnu never comes alone. So he will always come or associate with the devotees. So Tirtha has two elements in it, right? Krishna. More important than Krishna is the devotees, right? So the most important element of a Tirtha itself is devotee. And if we get a pure devotee like that, we don't have to go to the Tirtha, because the Tirtha is in the heart, right? Many people, we understand that Srila Prabhupada was living in Vrindavan, how at the age of 70, he left everything and he traveled to US. He left Vrindavan. Everybody was shocked. Why at this age you are leaving Vrindavan? You're a sannyasi, you have given up your life, and what is the point of, leaving Vrindavan? But then Prabhupada never left Vrindavan, because Vrindavan was always carried in his heart. Wherever Srila Prabhupada went, he converted those places into Vrindavan. That's why ISKCON temples are so special, because Srila Prabhupada, through his potency, by his devotional service, not only that he was carrying Tirtha in his heart, he was able to establish many, many Tirthas around the world. That is the power of a devotee, right? So this concept we need to understand very, very much, because when this will give us the right perspective when we meet devotees, right? So there is no question, like when we meet our spiritual master, when we engage in his service, we are actually serving the dham. We are serving a principle higher than even the principle of serving Krishna. Krishna says, of all the, we hear of all the worship, worship of Vishnu is great, and worship greater than worship of Vishnu is the worship of devotees. And here we also see, even than Tirtha, higher than Tirtha, the Tirtha itself is famous because of devotees, and it became a Tirtha because of devotees, and it retains the status of Tirtha because of the devotees. Many people go to Tirtha to give up the sin, but a devotee goes there so that he can purify the place. He is not going there to purify himself. He is there going to purify the Tirtha itself. That is the glory of a devotee, because he carries Krishna in his heart, and he has the potency of Krishna. And Krishna is like Surya. Like Surya can purify all impurities, burn and absorb all impurities. Similarly, Krishna, by his energy, which is radiated through the devotees, can purify everything. So as devotees, this verse is very important for us, because it nails the point of serving devotees more than anything else. In when we become a devotee, the crux of devotional service, the point on which everything hinges, our whole devotional service hinges, is how much do we serve a Uttamadhikari, a pure devotee of the Lord. Only based on that is, directly proportional to our increase in our devotional service. Even the capability to chant purely comes by serving the devotees. So it's very essential. And this verse is very essential. So we finished the first 10 verses. I think we have 1 hour time is run out. So we'll finish the class here. This chapter will go a little slow because, as I said, we have more than 60 verses, and instructions of Vidura to Dhritarashtra and later Narada Muni to Yudhishthira. They are pretty heavy philosophically. So we will go a little slower because these are all very essential to understand. But so this chapter we may take a little bit more time, more than 3 weeks for us to finish. But then we'll try to cover as much as possible in the coming weeks. So I'll finish my class here. Grindaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol.